All right, guys, I can take these off now. Welcome back to the Corrective Culture podcast. Today we had Alison Armstrong on. She's an author, beautiful person. We went deep into a lot of spiritual kind of stuff, and it was a great podcast.
Yeah, she wrote the book The Queen's Code. It's about sort of how women relate to men, and really an amazing masculine feminine relationship dynamic expert. And just we hit her with our own little questions. Some people asked us some questions, hit her with that, and just gave us like real insights in how what men want, what women want, and how women can emasculate men and how they'll treat that, and infidelity and all sorts of stuff. So went for a while, really enjoyed it.
It's probably our longest podcast we've done, I reckon.
Nearly ever, eh?
Yeah.
She's amazing woman. The Queen's Code, get her book, highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And
and aspire to be like her, eh? She's just like a queen, absolute queen.
Yeah, like her, like 61 or something, and just like so healthy. And
the eyes, like as soon as she came on, I was just like looking in her eyes. I was like, fucking hell, it's just like a crazy soul.
Yeah, and she's got what's like just that so youthful and so curious about life, and so like just frothing on everything. And like I love when you hear from those people.
I know.
Yeah,
being channeled.
Yeah.
Ciao. What is the Queen's Code about? Like, what inspired you to start, writing that book?
Okay, so have you listened to it already?
No, I haven't. This is the first time I'm seeing it, so I'm very interested.
So that was my next question. Like for men, like I'm going to get it after this, right? So I feel like I'm getting pushed towards this sort of stuff more and more. And I'm really curious about it. Yeah. And is it made for men as well to understand the dynamic, or what is it about?
Okay. So I'll try to give you the short version, but it's a good thing that you have a benevolent universe bent, because I'm crazy guided, have been ever since I was a little girl. And so I recommend listening to it.
Okay.
Cool.
Rather than reading it, because reading it, you'll filter the characters' voices through what you think they are.
Yeah.
And I technically didn't write the Queen's Code.
Nice.
I started studying men in 1991 after what happens in the first chapter of the Queen's Code to one of the main characters. Her name is Kimberly, and her best friend was called a frog farmer, as in a woman who, instead of turning frogs into princes, turns princes into frogs.
Right.
Yeah. And that happened to me in February of 1991. I was 30 years old, and it was my friend sitting next to me and a colleague, and she challenged the seminar leader, this really nasty accusation against men, and he called her a frog farmer. And my life flashed before my eyes. And I'd been involved in transformation since I was 19 years old. I knew I could transform myself over and over again. I tried to change men probably since I started kindergarten and failed miserably. And I was separated, getting a divorce from my husband, had a 1.5-year-old son. And 2.5. He was 2.5 at the time. And when Lisa was called that, and I just was true. But it gave me so much hope, because I thought men were lesser humans than women. I questioned if men had souls. I knew I couldn't hurt you because you didn't have any feelings, so it didn't matter what I did to you. The world would definitely be a better place if it were run by women. I mean, the whole gamut. I was so normal. And I was sure men either didn't care about what I needed or were actively withholding it. And but the idea that I was bringing out the worst in men, instead of that men are who I thought they are, that was thrilling to me. Like, I can do something about me. I haven't been able to change men, but I can transform myself. And then this question popped into my head, because I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was so normal. And I couldn't see any example of any woman who treated men differently than I did. And then this question popped into my head. What if men are responding to women? And so I started with 3 men that you would, now these days you would have called me a coach, but I was their cheerleader and their sounding board, and it's how I supported myself because I ran a nonprofit organization. And I started with them, and when they did things that surprised me, I tried to figure out why they did it. And then when I thought I knew why, I would check it out with them. Did you do this because of that? And for the very uncomfortably long time, I was so wrong. I like everything I would propose. Like, did you do what your mom wanted you to do when you didn't want to do it because you didn't want to upset her? And the man was like, ew. Even said, ew. I would never do anything for that reason, and no self-respecting man would. And I'm thinking, women do things all of the time in order to not upset people. That's a perfectly rational explanation. So why did you do what your mom wanted when you didn't want to do it? And I caught on really early to not interrupt. Just listen and keep listening. And I got a lesson. I got a lesson in duty and being a son. And that for him, as a son, his duty was to help his mom, whether he wanted to or not. And that led to loyalty, which led to honor, doing the right thing, no matter how you feel, in either direction. Like whether you're angry or whether you are madly in love with someone, still do the right thing, no matter how you feel. And 6 months into studying men, the only woman whose life I envied, she was married, she had children, she was a titan in the community, and her husband was still courting her, still flirting with her. They were married for 13 years. How is this, right? And she called me up. She called me up at work, said, we got to talk. Men are attracted to you like bees to honey, and when you're done with them, it's as if they've been with a vampire. Me? Little old me? And she proceeded to lay out every way she'd either seen me emasculate a man or saw the result and knew that I had. And she was naming these incidences one after another. And my reaction, I'm sorry, gentlemen, my reaction was normal female reaction. She would say something she saw me do. I'd be like, oh, yeah, that was a good one. Took the wind right out of his sail. Oh, yeah, he was so full of himself. That was the end of that. Oh, and then there's this. Oh, yeah, he was asking for that. It's a good thing I did it. I mean, everything was, I was proud of myself that I was doing the job I was supposed to do. Men have too much power. We got to take it away. Take them down every chance you get. Don't let them get too full of themselves. They'll be the consequences of testosterone everywhere. Here, sperm everywhere. Mayhem and sperm. That's what would happen if we let. Sorry. But then as I started listening and learning, and then Ellen calls me on emasculating men to ask me to stop. And I have Kimberly's reaction because the Queen's Code is fiction. We learn better from stories than being on the hot seat. It's from 8 different points of view. So you're literally in their head.
That's
so
cool.
When you hear a new section and I say, Kimberly, da 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 da, you're in Kimberly's point of view. Or you might be in Bert's point of view. Bert's an elder, if you know anything about the stages of development. He's an elder. His wife is Claudia. Claudia is pushing 80 now. And her family's been studying men for over 500 years. And Claudia is Kimberly's grandmother. And Kimberly's quite intimidated by Claudia and has lots of things she doesn't want Claudia to know about her. But she's the only woman she can think of who could teach her how to stop being a frog farmer, because her grandfather is clearly in love with her grandmother and has been for over half a century. Yeah. So she must not be a frog farmer.
Yeah.
So that's the framework of the book.
That's
and
cool.
There's another character, and her husband who come from the prequel called Keys of the Kingdom that you don't have to listen to first, but I would encourage you to. It's about the stages of development of men. It's very honoring. And so initially when I started studying men and then I gave up emasculating men, and I thought maybe I could learn how to bring out the best in men, but all I had to do was stop taking their power from them. I just had to stop emasculating men and they became amazing. Like, I couldn't believe how they changed in the way that they interacted with me. It was, wow. And I was in a 10-session seminar at the same organization at Landmark, and this woman called me up and she said, it was like the sixth session or something, and she said, I've been watching you, and you can't possibly be sleeping with all of them. So I'm like, no, I'm not. So, what do you know about men that I don't? And that was the beginning of me sharing with other women what I'd learned, but also seeing that from the moment I started studying men in February till August, when Ellen called me on emasculating men, everything I'd learned, I'd been using against men. I became a better manipulator. I became a more exacting and destructive emasculator by all these things I was learning about men and how much men care about women. And so I was afraid. I was afraid of giving information to women who didn't first realize how counterproductive emasculating men is. And I called it the transformation of the castration club. I did it one-on-one from 1991 to 1995 when we had our first workshop called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. And we named it that to protect it from the people who would attack what we were doing. Just stay the heck away. We are celebrating. If you're not interested in that, don't come. And it was intense. It was, oh my gosh, women, we called them angry and vengeful in 1995. And unfortunately, they became frustrated and strategic, and now we seem to be back to angry and vengeful again, depending on who you're talking to here. But anyhow, so the Queen's Code, I learned quickly that I knew I wanted to write a book because what I learned was the opposite of what I was taught about men and what I believed to be true about men. Became the world's greatest fan of men and admirer of men and celebrator of men and endlessly curious. I never committed to studying men for a particular length of time. I honestly thought it would take 2 to 3 months to learn everything worth knowing about you shallow creatures. And we're going on 34 years, and I've never committed. I've just been fascinated. And probably 1,000 times in the last almost 34 years, I have thought or said out loud, who are these people? I'm in awe. I'm in awe of men and how different the men are than women, which of course you're not allowed to say these days. And men gave me the greatest gift, because in my assumption of men being superficial, I thought men would want to talk about work and sports. And first of all, men who love sports, when they're talking about sports, they are not being superficial at all. They won't talk about the sports they love to somebody who doesn't get it, right? And watching sports is one of the best ways I've studied men. And team sports and, pro football, organized combat with rules, right? And the World Series, oh my goodness. Anyhow, I love sports and I love learning everything about it. And my boyfriend is an athlete, which makes it super fun. And anyhow, it just kept snowballing. And then I thought I needed to write a book, and I spoke to someone about it, and they told me how to figure out whether I had a book or not. Definitely had a book. Figured out it had to be fiction because people don't learn very well when on the hot spot and in the hot seat. And but I knew I didn't know how to write it. And that's why we started our workshops, is so by teaching women what I'd learned about men and having them give up emasculating men, in that interaction, I hope to learn how to write the book. So that was 1995. And I didn't write the book until 2009.
Wow.
Wow.
So all the time in between was me learning what triggers women to disempower and diminish men, how we do it, and then how we justify it. Because it's all three parts.
Right.
And learning. And the Queen's Code, from the different points of view, whether it's Melissa, who was called the frog farmer, you can see how she emasculates her husband and even her sons and how she justifies it. And you can see how Kimberly, the best friend, how she does it and how she justifies it and what triggers her, really triggers her. And so you've got Claudia and Karen and Kimberly and Melissa, and then you've got these men. You've got Kimberly's boss, Raul, and Kimberly's boss's best friend, Jack, who pisses Kimberly. That lech, that. And I say really bad words. Well, that's what she thinks of Jack. And then there's Karen, she's a teacher and she's been studying with Claudia for about a year, and she was put on hold. She was put on hold because Claudia didn't want to just teach one woman, because she knew that one woman would be as lonely as she was. She's the only person she knew who loved men. So she was waiting and she was hoping that Kimberly would come around. And so first chapter of the book,
That's
Kimberly comes around and the lessons begin. And in answer to your question, Callan, is that the right way to say it?
Callan, yeah, for me.
Callan. In answer to your question about for men, I originally, so I didn't actually write it. Just have to say that. Okay. I sat down to write it. I had a contract with Random House to write it. I sat down to write it, and just like Keys of the Kingdom, a screen opened up, about right here. A movie started playing. The characters did what the characters did. They all are who they are. I didn't decide anything about them. I typed as fast as I could. It took 3 weeks to type a 96,000 word book.
Wow.
It's called channeling.
Yeah.
Channeled it. So why I say to listen to the audiobook is because I'm recreating the movie I was shown.
Yeah.
And so it has their tone, their emotion, their intensity in it. And you'll hear me get choked up. I learned from the book. I've listened to it, I think, 9 times.
Wow.
As having technically written it and recorded it and edited. And but so I wrote it in order to transform how women relate to men. But then about, let's see, it would have been 2020. A man named Will Spencer, who is part of the men's movement. He got a hold of me and he'd read it like a year or two before. It was the first time he'd ever heard from a woman illuminating men and why men do what they do and the really good, beautiful reasons that men do what they do. And therefore the language that men are sensitive to, we call it the hero language, and the words that women avoid using and then are frustrated by a failure to communicate. But they don't know they're literally avoiding the words that communicate to men. And so what happened was, through Will and others, the Queen's Code has become part of men's journey. And my intent in supporting them in that is that you become impervious to being emasculated. That when you can see the fear and the frustration behind the meanness and the fury and the ugh.
Mhm.
the the deprecation, the criminalization of men. When you see the fear and the fury behind it, or the way I expressed it a few weeks ago, you can look the dragon in the eyes and see it's terrified. Um, that you become impervious to being emasculated. You just see it for what it really is, and don't don't collapse your space to it. Hold your space. Just hold your space and keep being you. And it's happening more and more, so that makes me happy.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay, that was kind of a long answer to a short question,
No,
but
it's great. This is
Yeah.
exactly what we wanted to hear. And,
Yeah.
and what I'm
so
curious
good.
about is how you said you had those ideas when you were younger of men. What was your parents' dynamic like? Did you learn that from your parents or from culture at the time?
Well, ay, ay, ay. My parents were 19 and 23 years old with three children under the age of 4.
Yeah.
I was the middle child. So my mom was 18 when I was born. And my father came from a wealthy family. And her parents kind of, not even kind of, they pushed her to go be with him. And she was 4 years younger. And so they were 16 and 20 years old and pregnant and trying to find a place to get married,
Mm.
and then shipped off to Hawaii by his parents. And young people, I spent my childhood at parties. I go find a closet to curl up in. Um, they never slowed down, even though they had 3 kids. And they got divorced when I was 9. Um, I thought I was 12, but I was lied to by my mother, who my father was just considered an ogre and an alcoholic. She blamed everything on him being an alcoholic. And my mother literally taught me how to manipulate men. I remember once being in the grocery store and she was like, "Oh, watch this. I'm going to charm him." And she was a beautiful woman and all curvaceous in all kinds of ways. And ay, 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 she thought the worst of men because they fell for it.
Mm.
So she played it, they fell for it, at least she thought they did. And so she thought they were stupid. And, later on, studying men about manipulation, the men were laughing. They're like, we see it coming a mile away.
Mm.
We just put up with it because we want what's being offered.
Mm.
It's like, oh my gosh, all all that she thought, it wasn't true. And my mother had 4 husbands, if that tells you how that
Yeah.
continued on. My dad had 3 wives. Um, they they didn't model anything about partnership, the thing I've been passionate about for as long as I can remember. They didn't ever show us how to work something out, or that you could fall in love again and again,
Mm.
like my husband and I did for almost 28 years. And um, so I would say part was modeled by my mother, but the culture was so much like that. I mean, I was born in 1960, so it
Mhm.
was really confusing. It was the message was you had to have a man. You absolutely had to have a man, or you were worthless as a woman. But don't need him.
Right.
Don't need him for anything. So the way I wrapped it up is you got to get a man, keep a man, and make him act right. But partnership, co-creation, family, devotion, loyalty, have each other's back. No, knew nothing of that until I started studying men. I learned all of that from men. And the other thing that I started to say is in studying men, listening to men, they wanted to talk about women and sex and love and relationship and commitment and family. And as men described women to me, I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't. They would describe women as magical, mystical creatures, unicorns in the forest with these amazing ability to walk into a room and change everything about what was happening there just because of how they were being. Or the power of compassion, or how blown away men are by serenity. A woman being serene. Whoa. Talk about powerful. And that actually had me look queen up in the dictionary. And it gave these different definitions, including, a woman married to a king, a woman with power in her own right. And the best one was in the context of chess. The most powerful piece, able to move an unlimited number of spaces in any unlimited number of unoccupied spaces in any direction. And that definition was the key to me figuring out what a queen is. And that it's all about unoccupied spaces, that masculine forms of power impact occupied spaces. There's something there, it's demolished, it's moved, it's pushed out of the way. But feminine power is really about making a space for something to happen. It's like a womb. Things happen around her because she's a space for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you guys taught me that.
Did I really? Yeah, it's
Hey,
cool.
it is. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And so much of my work has been having women identify their own definition of greatness, as in qualities that they stand for but are having trouble embodying and therefore having trouble being. And how to do that, how to identify potentially who you really are in a spiritual domain, and then how do you manifest it in a physical paradigm, which earth is physical start to finish. So how do you be your highest value and even overflow? How do you overflow as your highest values? You don't have to try. You never have to pretend. You just are being who you are. So I think like an engineer. So reverse engineering, how does one cause one's own greatness? And we have a course called Being Extraordinary as a Woman, and we have a course Being Extraordinary as a Man. And and I encourage men and women to watch the opposite version. It's an amazing way to learn about who we are.
Yeah, that's like it's like you're telling us truths that I wasn't even really conscious about, but it's still a truth to me. Like when you talk about serenity, I mean, I probably couldn't even define that in the dictionary, but I sort of know what it means. And God, that's the truth, hey? Like, because I know, like in the culture these days, well, it's all social media, right? The whole dating life is social media. It's not all that, but the eyes are on that. And I sometimes look at what, well, at least from my perception, what women think guys want. And I'm like, that's not what we want. Like you're thinking about the physical and the body and the bikinis and that. And that's health is a part of it for sure. Health is a huge thing for us, obviously. But it's that queen archetype energy, that serenity, that sort of uplifting. I think uplifting is probably the biggest thing for me personally anyway, is when a girl can uplift your energy, like that's sexy. It's not all the other stuff, and maybe they can uplift it with sex, right? But also just their energy and their being, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like not just confident, but just like happy to be around. You know what I mean? And that softer energy to be around. It's so important. Hey, yeah, it's like that's probably what a lot of guys are yearning for, but they don't even know that either. And when you were talking about emasculating, That's true too. Like I've seen it in other people's, it's amazing how you can see all these things in other people's relationships and then you reflect on your own from back in the day and you're like, oh, I can see that here and there. But what is a way of emasculating a man? Like what are a couple of like scenarios that you've seen play out in your workshops and whatnot that maybe the woman wasn't aware of and the guy doesn't even know he was being emasculated but didn't like the way it felt?
Okay, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they fall into kind of categories. And for everybody who's watching this, what women do to men, women do to women, and women do to themselves, and men do to themselves and each other. It's a human thing. It's not just a gender thing, it's a human thing. And there's things that you could consider like an outright kind of attack, like criticism and complaining. Those would be visible. Being denigrating, especially in public. Those are obvious ones. Ones that aren't so obvious, I call them green emasculation because they require very little energy. If you want to reduce your emasculation footprint, then instead of attacking, criticizing, and complaining, just withhold. Withhold admiration, withhold affection, withhold accountability, which a lot of people don't understand, withhold sex. I know women women were confessing. You'll see this in our Understanding Men course, which now men can watch us teach women about men. This woman confessed that she goes, I just withhold food. Like, what? I can tell he's hungry. I don't offer anything. I don't give him anything to eat. Tough. Be hungry. And but there's also like withholding accountability. Women want things done, but they want things done their way. And so they really want people to help and they want to delegate things. They don't want someone to take charge of it and produce a result for them. And that's what you guys are built for. You thrive on accountability. If you've asked for it, like, let me be in charge of that. I'll deliver the results. You thrive on that. And accountability energetically takes a ton of testosterone. And you all have between 15 and 30 times more testosterone than we do. So accountability doesn't exhaust you the way that it exhausts us, but will literally like have you be handymen instead of heroes. It's gross, and women don't know that they're doing that actively. They won't let it go. Like, what does he want to be accountable for? What are you talking about? Well, there's certain things he wants to be accountable for. Will you let him be accountable? Huh? And like Greg, Greg was the chief of safety. And I knew from everything I learned about men when our daughters were born that he needed me to honor him as the person accountable for all of our safety. And the way to honor him was to do it his way and to follow the guidelines that worked for him. Unless I had a real bone to pick, which I would take him aside, or we'd have nicknames. Like he'd get really bossy, and I'd say, "Okay, Chief Commander," and he'd realize he'd just disconnected the whole family.
Yeah.
But the kids would come to me, Mom, can we do this? Can we do this? Do you think your dad would let you do that? No, but we really want to do it. He's the chief of safety. And they knew if they got a no from one of us and went to the other to get a yes, oh, they were in deep trouble. Don't you ever put us against each other. But, Greg was really overreactive. So I banned him from Disneyland. because he was like going to Disneyland with the Secret Service. He saw danger everywhere. And the
Mm.
kids couldn't have any fun because he's like, and but there was one of the things that we shared. Like I was accountable for our children's education, and so he empowered me, right? And I would empower him. And I wanted my daughter to get to do something with my mother, and I said, okay, just so you know, you have the veto on this. And he told me later if I hadn't said that, he wouldn't have been able to hear a word I said. But since he got to say yes or no, he could hear me. And I was like, my mother wants to take Claire to France and Switzerland. And he said, who's going to be the grown up? Yeah, that was his opinion of my mom.
All
But
right.
yeah, but we set it up that they were going to stay with a man and be protected by a man that was interested.
Okay.
It's they got to go. Did my mother misbehave? Of course. Um, ay. But anyhow, it's so withholding would be a green way. One of the ways we emasculate men that women don't know, and they don't know how much it pisses men off, is we ignore you. As in, we notice you're there, but we'll walk by you without any acknowledgement, like you're not worthy of acknowledgement. And what men don't know about women doing this is part of it is that women are afraid that any kind of the eye contact a man will interpret as a sexual invitation. They don't know men are much more sensitive to that. And unless a man's falling down drunk, he can tell where boundaries are.
Mm.
And women don't know how well they need to hold their boundaries. They don't know the differences in what testosterone and estrogen do to the brain, which that's a whole other topic. But so we ignore men. We don't acknowledge your presence, or we'll ignore something that you say. Well, it's really, it comes from fear, but it's also covert, and it's really detrimental. And one of my favorite memories, I was in Atlanta for the first time. I was out on a walk. I went by a construction site. There was a parking lot and then a two-story building, and there's these men pounding away, and they started whistling at me. And I had the classic female fear reaction, like, and then I just stopped. Yes, that's an ancient reaction, but it doesn't mean it's founded. And I turned and I looked at them and I said, good morning. It's like, good morning. How are you today? And they're like, howdy, ma'am. Very well, thank you. And it's love today. You have a good one. You have a good one. It was just like, okay, it was an object to object interaction. And then I granted them humanity, and they granted it right back. Instant. And I mean, that's how I see everything that there is to do.
Yeah. Wow.
That's cool.
In regards to a male's perspective, because we're talking about like the way a woman will emasculate a man. And then when you're talking about testosterone, and as you know, testosterone's plummeting pretty well every year, isn't it? Like 1% lower each year from a science perspective, right? I don't know what it's from, whether it's the plastics, whether it's the culture, whether it's the food, I don't know, but apparently
it might be aromatase.
What's that, sorry?
Aromatase. Do you know about aromatase?
No, what is that?
Okay, I'm sorry, interrupted you.
No, that's good. Go for it.
Okay, so it's an enzyme. It's called aromatase. And what it does is it converts testosterone to estrogen. And it can work for us or against us. So like a woman who's been in what you might call man mode or hunter mode, right? She's just been at work kicking butt, taking names, produce, produce, produce. And now she has a date. And she realizes that that doesn't work on a date.
Mm.
Men are, as one man put it, I'm not looking for someone who's like me.
Yeah.
Y'all
Fully.
lean into not me. That's intriguing. And so say she decides, okay, I'm going to turn into a girl. And she might, change into some higher heels, freshen up. Okay, I'm going to be a girl. I'm going to turn into a girl. She might put some music on. And unbeknownst to her, aromatase has just kicked in and is actively converting the excess testosterone in her bloodstream into estrogen. She is biologically becoming girlified. It will literally change how her brain is working, how she perceives, how she's processing information. It will change her. This is a good thing when she decides to do it. Now, bad thing is, and this fits with what we were talking about men and how you're built for accountability, and we keep withdrawing accountability from men. And so imagine you're rested, right? So you had a good week, you had a good workout, you're resting, you're literally building testosterone. So one of the things they teach men, when a woman says, "What are you doing?" Never say nothing. Say, "I'm building testosterone." And so you're building testosterone as you rest. And I think women have what I call a testosterometer. We can smell when you've gone from useless to handy. And we'll usually plop down next to you and say something like, "Could you just listen?" And you've built this testosterone, and now you're ready to get up and produce some results. But she caught you right in that moment when you were going to get up and go do something. And so you're like a racehorse who's caught in the gate. And the gate is not opening, not opening, not opening. And you're in a verbal cage, and you're supposed to just be listening, and you'll start squirming. You might remember this. You start squirming. And it's because aromatase is kicked in, and that testosterone you just built, it's now turning into estrogen, and you're being biologically emasculated.
Right.
That's why I brought up maybe it's aromatase.
Yeah. So, and for that, do you think that is of a cultural thing, changing that? I guess it's a bit of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't know the whole picture. I intentionally ask what's my part, and I'm determined to do my part well.
Yeah.
And I don't try to do all the other parts. So I'm learning from you now as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that testosterone levels are falling. I know young men in the US fail horribly in an educational system that's designed and maintained by women who have no idea how to engage a young man in education. They do what works with girls, and girls we're compelled to be pleasing. We're compelled to be pleasing. We're the weaker and smaller gender, and we're compelled to be pleasing because we think that will keep us safe. And so we'll please a teacher, where a young man couldn't give a flying fart about pleasing his teacher. And when he says, "Am I going to use this?" This is the most common question. Where am I going to use this? When am I going to use this? That is, you have a teenage man, he is trying to figure out how to, can I say a bad word on your podcast?
Oh, we say it all the time. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we have some critical misnomers in the vernacular. And one of them is the word dick. That we say, "Oh, he's just dicking around." Like not producing a result. That's the opposite of what a dick is made for. It's going to produce a result. And so in my world, when we do something really well, we say, I dicked it.
Makes
And
sense.
so here, yes. So here you have these young men who are trying to figure out how to dick life, how to succeed at life, and they're sitting in a classroom, not getting to move their bodies, and they're supposed to cram themselves in these little desks and fill out these papers. And when they say, when am I going to use this? The teacher says, never mind. Don't
Mm.
worry about that.
Mm.
No, answer the question. Well, you get a good grade, you'll have a good grade. They don't, what do I care about a good grade? How's a grade going to have me handle life?
Mm.
Like I did a class once called Gender Differences in Education at a middle school, and the principal was there, all the teachers. And it was all about how to interact with girls who need to feel liked or they'll fall apart, and young men who need to be set up to win. This is how you win at this. Fill out this worksheet, bring it up for me to grade. If you get a B or better, the rest of the period you can do as you like, as long as you don't bother anybody else. Wait, you told me how to win, you told me the standard, and I get a reward?
Mm.
I get my life back? Anyhow, I have been an instigator of people leaving public education to do something much more productive and effective and nurturing to who they are.
Amen.
And follow your nose, follow your passion. You can learn everything you need to know just following one thing. I
Yeah.
know a young man, he's 12 years old. He's training a team of ponies, 2-year-old
Wow.
miniature ponies to pull a sled and a cart, and he's going to compete at that. And he started training his own pony when he was 6 years old. He's homeschooled.
Mm.
Anyhow, I could get going on that. But the
Yeah.
disempowerment of men starts very early. And that's actually how Ellen got to me when she asked me to stop emasculating men. And my response was, well, then how will I protect myself? She said, my son was almost 3 years old at the time. She said, you're even doing it to Jeffrey. And I knew she was right. I had set out to carve every bit of male out of my son. I was so pissed at his father.
Mm.
And I was doing it. And I didn't realize how cruel it was and how wrong it was until she said that. And my son, do you guys know who Marlon Brando was?
Yeah. Godfather.
The Godfather was the older Marlon Brando. But if you find young Marlon Brando, oh man, he hot.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember.
And this intense masculinity about him. My son was born with that kind of intense masculinity.
That's awesome.
He was 3 months old and charming flight attendants. And and I was going to carve it all out of him. I'm glad I stopped. He's an extraordinary man.
In what way? Like, what way were you conscious about? Was it disapproving of certain actions that he was doing, or was it encouraging other traits?
Well, anything that seemed violent in any way was forbidden.
Right.
So he couldn't even have a squirt gun. So he would turn a banana into a gun. Pow. And then he'd get in trouble for that. And use your inside voice. Boys don't have inside voices. They're not meant to have inside voices, right? Be quiet and gentle. I was trying to turn him into a girl.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing I stopped when he was 3 years old
Mm.
and let him be a man and bought him a set of I don't know if you've ever seen The Princess Bride, but we watched that like every other day. So he had his own sword and shield and helmet.
Sick.
And and I mean, you're talking about MMA. My son started with Krav Maga
Oh yeah.
after he was actually um what would you even call it? Carjacked? A couple of guys on drugs in Australia,
Mm.
actually, that's Melbourne, wanted to steal his car, and they were willing to kill him for it. And he went from there to learning Krav Maga and then mixed martial arts. And then my daughter, his 5 year younger sister, joined him in mixed martial arts. And that's actually a video of her for the gym she used to be at because her technique was so perfect. Um, and he's a freestyle rock climber and hardcore surfer. I mean,
So is he like, he's about 35, is he?
36, yeah.
36?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm 32. Jake's 35. Yeah, and we both train jiu-jitsu, and I've fought MMA and that. So it's so relatable. It's I think of a story about my cousin's next door neighbor. Their parents used to never let him play with guns. So he'd come next
Yep.
door to play with toy guns, and now he's in the army. Now he's grown up and he's in the army, you know? So it's like you
Yeah.
can't, the more you try and stop, the more that it'll break out. It just always is like that. It's funny how it's like the universe balances itself out somehow.
Yeah. Can the roles be reversed? Like, do you find like that the roles can be reversed? Like the man could play a lot of the feminine role very often? Or do you, because some of the stuff you've said today, it's kind of like, I'm like, I feel like I'm playing the feminine role there. Like I would be doing that to my partner who's a little bit more masculine per se. Yeah.
Well, there's a huge difference, Jake, between roles, as in what you're accountable for, what you're responsible for, what you're doing, and how are you being.
Yeah. So being would be more
So
energy and roles would be more kind of something that you've developed, like the mask you've developed over.
it doesn't even have to be a mask.
Mm.
Like, there was a time when I asked my husband to quit his career and make our children his first priority so that I could make our business my first priority. Because
Yeah.
I strongly believe that children have to be someone's first priority
Yeah.
or they don't thrive.
Yeah.
And they've been my first priority. And I asked him, would he swap? I could tell he wasn't into being an accountant anymore. He was an amazing dad. He took care of our kids while I was leading somewhere every other weekend. And so he accepted and he made them his job. But he didn't do it the way I did it. He did it his way. He did it as a man. And focused and activities and he wasn't just around and available the way that I did mom. He did dad his way.
Mm.
And he even would come to me sometimes and say, they need you, which was really beautiful. And so I think when if you watch a man be a dad, he's usually going to be single focused. The testosterone creates that. And so it'll be one thing at a time. And everything happening at once, he's going to make it line up.
Mm.
It's got to. And so I don't think I'm all for people doing what's a privilege to do. And for Greg, it was a privilege to make our kids his first priority.
Mm.
It made his passing 5 years ago really hard because our girls were so close to him. And even my son from my previous marriage, so close to him. And so it's more like there's no right way to do it. We got to feel our way into it
Mm.
and tell the truth about what's satisfying and what's really fulfilling, like a self-expression. You're going to give what you want to give, and what's a sacrifice, what's sucking the life out of you. And when I asked Greg to switch priorities with me, his job was sucking the life out of him. So it was a good invitation. And so I think we can all do any of it. I mean, heck, we're built to survive. We've evolved to survive. And literally, given the proper stimulation, and doesn't mean hormone shots, a man can nurse a baby if necessary. A man can nurse a baby. His body will literally rise to the occasion and produce everything that needs to happen. It's rarely called upon, but it can happen, and we can be who we need to be. And then there's some things that are so hard to be, and what it costs. Like, I talk to women all the time about what we're like, I call it hoeing and hogging. We will take on being accountable for everything. And in order to control it, in order to have our way, in order to be more important, we will just keep sucking up accountability. And which is leaving men built for accountability, and none of the women will let them. They just want them to be handy. And but for women who have so much less testosterone, it's exhausting. And we have women in their 30s having heart attacks. We have women unable to conceive because their body is interpreting the high levels of adrenaline as they're in a state of danger most of the time. So why would you conceive? Nature doesn't conceive in a state of danger. It conceives in a state of abundance. So women struggling with fertility, women struggling with adrenal burnout, with exhaustion, heart attacks. I mean, how we're trying to replace men, it's killing us. But would I ever say we shouldn't have the right to do that? No. I wouldn't deny anybody the right to do what they're passionate about, but let's get real here. What are the consequences? What are our bodies built for? Now, include that in the equation instead of thinking that, I mean, it's really old. It goes way back to the 60s. The thinking that the only way women are going to get equality is by preaching sameness, that we are the same. And anyone, whether it's John Gray or me or Luann Brizendine, who wrote The Female Brain and the Male Brain, anyone who says that men and women are different are going to be under attack by people who think that sameness is the road to equality. How about differentiation and respect instead?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, common sense.
It's
That's
common.
to me,
It's common sense. Hey,
Yeah.
it's like it just feels
common
right.
sense.
God.
But no. I was 10 years old and I took this test, and one of the things they said was I had the common sense of the average adult. And then I grew up and took that as an insult.
Yeah, fully. Hey,
Like, yes, common sense. What about some common sense? What about logic? What about, I mean, one of the things I pay attention to is cause and effect. And most people are struggling because they're entrenched in false cause. They really want to pursue the solution to a problem that they've misdefined. And then they wonder why they're ineffective at it. I mean, just for example, so many women will reject the idea that men are different. that gender hormones configure brains, bodies differently. They reject that. No, that's a social construct, and think that they don't have the relationship they want because of some personal attribute, the size of their bum or their breasts, or that they're to this or not enough that, instead of just they're refusing to interact with the real people that are in front of them, instead of treating them like hairy women who are misbehaving.
Wow. This is a really cool like point of view, because I've always thought about it as like I've always logic, right? I'm logic. And how you say cause and effect, A equals B, this equals that. If it doesn't serve me, I move on, you know? And I've always thought it's empowering, like, all right, it's always the guy's fault. Like it's always our fault, because in the scheme of, you can have a woman that is with this guy, they break up, she's with another guy, and she's a completely different woman with that guy because of his energy, right? But I've found it's rarer for a guy's going to be like that, whether he's with this woman, and then he's going to be the same when he's with the next woman, you know? So it's like the woman almost can mold to the guy's energy, whether he's more in his feminine or masculine or whatnot. And so I've never thought about it, how a woman's actions can change the guy's psyche, because the guy's meant to be doing what he's doing anyway, with or without her. That's always been my mindset around it all. And but now I realize maybe I've just been manipulated a couple of times here and there. I don't know. That's all new.
We'll talk about it in it's called In Sync with the Opposite Sex, and it's on our website, and it's also on Audible. And it was, I think, the third thing that I recorded. So much younger voice, but it was a live workshop. And women accused men of changing. Like, I thought it was like all an act. And then that once a man caught you, then he would change. He'd become his regular self. But what I discovered as I unwound it was that it was women who were changing. And that in these cases, men were responding to women. And a lot of it is set up biologically. So for the first 3 months, women are much more open and get to know you and try the things that you like and be more fun and interested and playful. And then at 3 months, which is coincidentally when a fetus would be viable, they want to know, where is this going? So getting to know you time is over. Now, are we going anywhere? And her limited fertile life, which, talk about opposites, men and women, her limited fertility now comes into play. And we've followed it, and it's like we all got a memo, but we didn't get a memo. So at 3 months, you want to know, where is this going? And how we'll ask that isn't, where is this going? We'll say, how do you feel about me? And then it's like, oh God, it's a feeling question. And how's she going to use this against me? And then if he happens to tell the truth and says, I care about you, she breaks up with him, because she doesn't know that him caring about her is the biggest thing he could. To care about her is huge. And but I mean, if it keeps going at 9 months, when a child would have been born, if these two had gotten together on the full moon when she was fertile, and he and his tribe brought food to trade for sex, which we're still imprinted by the way. That's why we go Dutch. We won't let you buy us dinner, because we think that you'll think that we owe you sex. And so many have met him and been like, I could have gotten sex.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's like, when you break it down logically and biologically, and okay, 9 months, you owe me a marriage proposal, whether I want to marry you or not, you owe it to me. And I mean, it's like the whole thing is lined out, but it's women who change. And we keep changing. And we don't understand how men are changing. Like, for example, when a couple gets engaged, would you do me the honor of being my wife? If she said yes, he's married. As of that moment, he's now married. He is fully committed, and he'll start interacting with her as if she's his responsibility to protect and provide for her. And he's going to be paying attention to finances, for example, our finances and our future. And he'll start talking these completely different ways that to him are completely congruent. We're doing this together. She's not doing it together yet. Mm-hmm. She's engaged to be married, which means she wants to plan a wedding. And she's not planning the marriage. And what we discovered, we have a course called Understanding Love and Commitment. It scared the pucky out of me when I discovered this. I mean, a beautiful thing is you as men, you buy the whole package. Eyes wide open, she's cranky these times of day. She's awful when this happened. Her mother's probably always going to be a problem. This is what I love about her. This is what I need about her. This is who I get to be because of who she is. I want life with her. Scoop her all up. And we can feel it when we've done that. And we relax. And sometimes we start being more truthful. Would have been good to be truthful before. That's what I teach my people. How about you lead with the truth? But what we discovered is men commit the whole package. Women commit one acceptance at a time. And I know women who had a wedding 30 years ago, and they have accepted hardly anything about their husband. They're still trying to change him. They planned on him changing. And women are shocked when they learn from us that one of the 12 things that makes a woman the right person to marry is that she likes him just the way he is. She doesn't have a change plan.
Yeah, that sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big thing when choosing a partner, eh?
Yeah, it is a big thing. And how you said that earlier, I look back and I used to find it hard to say I love you. And looking back on that now, because I was even though it was probably 3-4 years ago, it's like you feel like yourself as a kid almost then. It's crazy how these developments. But and reflecting on that, I think, why didn't I want to say I love you? I think because it equaled extreme commitment to me or something, like where I don't know, we didn't want to feel like trapped or something. But it's funny though, after I unlocked it, a couple of weeks went by, then it became easy. Oh, I love you, it had to be something I had to work through, but I was scared to say it at the start because I didn't want to feel, I guess, vulnerable, just wanted to feel safe, same as a woman wants to feel safe, but you just didn't know it then. Yeah. What about you? Have you ever struggled with that?
No, not really. But my parents were both really loving like that. Love was just like, yeah, I love you. It didn't have much I like saying it to friends, said to you, said to Harry, but I don't know. It's just the way it is for me.
Well, I can say it to my dog 100 times over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my mum, my dad, I could say it to, but I just couldn't say it to.
Yeah. Well, to someone that you're opening up your heart to.
Yeah.
So maybe you've got some stuff there around being hurt.
Yeah.
And I do too, for sure. I remember early on in relationship, it was very scary to open your heart up to someone, and especially once you get hurt. And I know Ram Dass says the thing is to learn how to keep your heart open in hell. And I think that's relationships are the biggest teacher.
Yeah.
They honestly are.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely always level up.
You do.
Yeah. You level up or you don't actually. Some people don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, you might have some light on this, but I've been in a relationship for nearly 5 years, and it's been beautiful because there's been plenty of times where I'm like, the grass is greener, I could go here, but this time for me, it's been really powerful to sit in it and go, okay, I'm going to keep attracting the same partner, because it's happened to me from a young age. So the same partner, same things. I still feel the same way, like, oh, my freedom, my freedom, my freedom. But truly what I realize is like freedom is a feeling that comes from like knowing who you truly are and what you truly want. I felt when I had partners, I was always looking outside of myself to use them, change them maybe, to fit into my view of life so I could feel fulfilled. But I feel like in a longer relationship, it's been really powerful to sit in it and go, this requires work. This requires like communication. And far out. You can deepen this relationship and go so deep because it is like a yoga. It is a yoga. Yeah. It's been full on. It's good. Talk to me.
I think you toured, yeah. Well, sadly, women think men are emotionally unavailable. That they're certain that just men are emotionally unavailable and unintelligent. And it's not true. It's that you're warriors and you're going to conceal anything that could be used against you. And so if you've experienced I love you being turned back on you, if you loved me, you would. And that's common. If you really loved me, you would. It's a manipulation. And I honestly think, because I practice love, love is the easy part.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just that love is the easy part. It's now what? And my boyfriend, Dan, and I, first half hour talking on the phone to each other. We were set up by a student of mine, and he said, I love you. And I said, I love you too. And they were like, oh, okay, got that over. And I said, and the question is, but do we fit?
Yeah.
Can I give you what you need, and can you give me what I need? That's what we've got to find out. And I proposed that we explore that and that we be together for only as long as we can give each other what the other person needs. And instead of till death do us part, no matter how much people change or grow or have different capacities and interests. And that makes sense when you're raising a family. But at our age, you never know what's going to happen and how people are going to change, or their capacities or their desires. And I never wanted to feel stuck, like I'm stuck with this person. And Greg and I were together for almost 30 years, and he just died suddenly.
Oh, wow.
And I did not expect to become single at 58. I thought I was going to be 81.
Yeah.
That was the deal.
Yeah.
And but I mean, Dan and I actively pay attention to giving what we want to give and getting what we need and being in partnership and working it out from this direction, that direction, and all these different formats and circumstances and things that we've been through. But we keep at bay the coupling instinct. You know, I have a voice in my head that's like, oh, just marry him. Just marry him. Just go all in. And I've told him, you don't want me to do that. You do not want me to do that. If I give up the right to walk away, what's my alternative going to be? Control you? We bought a motorhome together about 6 months ago. And we had the whole conversation of like, what would happen if we weren't still together? Then what happens to the motorhome? And just very grown-up conversation.
Cool.
I'm a big believer in grown-up conversation instead of this fantasy that all you have to do is meet a wonderful person and it'll all turn out. Are you kidding me? We have opposing instincts.
Hmm.
We seek safety and security in opposite and antagonistic ways. It's not just gonna work out.
It's so complex, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is quite. But it's also, I mean, it's complex because human beings are complex. Yeah. Because we
Love
change.
isn't complex.
No, that's simple.
Because love's there. Hey, it's like, yeah, I think about it sometimes. And like, if the partner wants to go off or see someone else or something like that, and I used to be super jealous as a kid, especially in early relationships, and I was like, oh, she's gonna leave me. She's gonna leave me, and I'm like, what would be the opposite of that? I was like, well, good on her. I hope that she has a beautiful, healthy, happy life and finds the partner of her dreams. Like, it instantly sets you free because you give yourself the love that you need to let go. And the weirdest thing I found is no one leaves you when you come at it from that place. And if they do, it's okay anyway. So it's like I love you anyway, and I accept that you want to be with someone else, or I want a different life now, or something like that. It really does help. Especially for me personally, this is just my opinion. Coming from a jealous background, from not having enough self-love when I was younger, it was like, once I learned that, I was like, wow, that's powerful. This is like, probably my dad probably taught me that.
Yeah,
I'd say,
yeah,
but
definitely would have.
Yeah.
What do you?
Sorry, 1 second, Callan. I'm a big believer in, if you can't meet each other's needs, then change the form. You don't have to kill the love. You just change what you're expecting from each other, what you're accountable to the other for. And you can love them just as much as you ever did, and actually be more free in the loving when you stop expecting from someone what they cannot give. And most people think it's awful to be the one that you can't get what you need from that person. It's just as awful to be the person who can't give what the other person needs. You just don't have it.
Yeah.
So set each other free. Change the form. You can keep the substance of all the love and support that you want, but change the expectation.
How do you do that?
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, like when my son's father and I stopped trying to get what we wanted from each other romantically, and I stopped trying to have a partnership with him, he who's not interested in one at all, and we just became Jeff's parents and decided to do right by our son. It completely changed how we interacted with each other.
Wow.
We didn't have to be nasty or anything. No.
Wow.
I'm going to spend Christmas with him.
Cool.
Like literally, my son brings his father to Christmas at
That's
at
cool.
my daughter's house. There's gonna be like 10 of us in this little house.
That's
To
awesome.
my dad, the more the merrier. It's interesting because my ex-husband hasn't changed at all.
Oh, that's so
Look
good.
at that. I want to touch on
Callan,
Claudia. Yeah, I want to touch on Claudia.
Claudia,
Yeah.
yes.
And because actually someone wrote in to ask you this, and it I guess ask you, what's the secret to Claudia and was it Bert, her partner, or her partner's that
Bert is her husband.
Bert's her husband, and how they've got that playful, flirty, still looking like they're on their first date style relationship. Because I've seen some like 80-something-year-old people walk in the park and they got that vibe, you know? It's like holding hands, doing their thing. It's rare, but you see it still, you know? So what is the secret to that long-lasting playfulness in a relationship?
Okay, I'm gonna blush. I think Dan and I were having some of that just before I got on with you guys. Well, I mean, the 5th chapter in the Queen's Code it's called it's called From Pumpkin Hours to Desserts. And it's about the information that a couple needs to exchange to have what I call a delicious sexual partnership. And it comes from a recognition of what sex and intimacy provides, what the energy of it provides, what the attention of it provides, what the giving and the receiving and the play, and how critical that is to individual well-being and to the union and the closeness of a union. It's really, really important. And it devolves for most couples because they don't understand how to restore each other and how to be committed to being restored. So there's parts of the Queen's Code where you'll hear Bert reminiscing about how lucky he is that his wife's always told him what to do if ever he hurt her feelings. She told him what to do so he could fix it. So he could always be back in her good graces. And that's a huge part of intimacy. If a woman's feelings are hurt and she doesn't get what she needs, which is usually, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings. She needs compassion. She'll shut down sexually. Over time, she might still lie down on the bed, but she will not be there anymore. It takes an open heart. And if a man experiences being disrespected, that there's a loss of admiration from the person that he's coupled with, and she doesn't admire him, and she doesn't find him desirable, she doesn't see strength in him anymore, game over. Why even try? And that's what happens. And it can happen, it can be a big kaboom, something that happened, or it can just be the erosion of criticism and complaining and not providing the information to the other person so they can score 1,000 points, so they can cause the big happy. Most women have no idea how much men want them to be happy and need them to be happy. I'm not saying happy wife, happy life. Women have no idea about that. And men don't know that you can't, I'm sorry, guys, but you can't make a woman happy. She's like 95% of it is on her. She has to get herself to a baseline of, for example, enough sleep and enough quality alone time and enough being nurtured by friends. She has to get herself to a baseline before anything will make her happy. And women don't know that about themselves. And so they don't take responsibility for getting to the place where a man could do the tiniest thing and put the biggest grin on her face.
Yeah.
And cause a moment of ecstasy because she's there for it. She's available for that. So there's a whole lot of misunderstanding and projecting onto the other person what we need and what I call decide and provide. We decide what you need and we give it to you, and then we try to extract the appreciation for what we provided without ever having asked, do you want it? And it's at the heart of so much mischief. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's like, it's nice hearing that. It's like that is what a guy does love, is respect. Hey, it's like, it's just, what is it about that? Hey, I don't know. It's like primal. It's primal.
it is primal.
Yeah.
If you think about it, your survival depends on your productivity, and you will be left to chasing rabbits on your own if you do not have the trust and respect of other hunters.
Yeah. And that's it. And the guy has to be worthy of respect. Like, he's got to be doing that, living that life. Like, otherwise he wouldn't respect himself. So why should she respect him if he's not respecting himself, you know? Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. Hey, and I just want to ask you this: what's your thoughts on? Do you reckon people can come back from infidelity? Like have you would have seen all sorts of stuff in your workshops? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. Yes, the answer is yes. People can, but I've noticed it takes a couple of things. Um, but can I start earlier than that? So coming back from infidelity depends upon recognizing the source of infidelity. And I did a study on this, unwillingly, but my graduates needed it, so I did it. And it was awesome. It changed my view of life because I'm fascinated by language. I think of myself as a dictionary girl. And the most attractive quality in a woman for a man to be intrigued by her, to care about her, to want to provide for her and take care of her. Number one, most attractive quality is self-confidence. And confidence comes from the word con and fid. It means with faith. So when a woman has faith in herself, that is enormously attractive. And infidelity is without faith, infid, confid and infid. So when someone loses confidence in their needs being met, they become unfaithful. It's just logic, it's just math. So employees, when they lose confidence in their employer providing a path or a career, acknowledgement, appreciation for them, they become unfaithful to the company. Children become unfaithful to their parents. Friends, siblings can become unfaithful. Whenever we lose confidence in that we're going to get what we need from that person, we naturally become unfaithful. And it might be expressed in bad mouthing, it might be expressed in pilfering supplies, it might be expressed in actively undermining your parents. Sorry, I might have remembered a moment of that. And there's all these. So one way to think about it is that the source of infidelity is always unmet needs. 100% of the time, there are unmet needs. And one of the things that women misunderstand about sexual infidelity is they think it's about sex. And they think as long as they're, putting up with or providing sex for their mate, they should be faithful. But they don't understand how much in that interplay, like you were talking about Claudia and Bert, that, and I talked to a man about this, he said it wasn't about the sex, it was about being admired. That his wife didn't admire him. She'd have sex with him, but she didn't admire him. So, and he was failing in his job. He needed to be good at something. So he had an affair with a woman who admired him. And so whatever the unmet need is, and unfortunately it may have never been expressed, and it may never have been presented as an ultimatum. Like, and I don't mean a fake ultimatum, I mean for real. If we don't fix this, I'm going to get what I need elsewhere. Like, imagine if you said that to your boss instead of just quit, right?
Yeah.
So, like, getting to deal with the reality of it. So, sexual infidelity, 100% of the time, it has to do with an unmet need that's been unmet for so long or in such a way that the person loses confidence in that it will ever be met. And what I've taught women about since 1995 is do not create a battle between a man's integrity and a man's needs. Do not pit them against each other, what he needs and what he's given his word to. And I know a man who went 30 years without sex.
Whoa.
Hoping that any day his wife was going to change her mind.
Whoa.
He calls it the drought.
Yeah, big drought.
But the thing that men don't know is, and most women don't know, is women are just as likely to be unfaithful as a man is. And it's usually not about sex. It's about connection. It's about attention. It's about being heard and seen and being desired. Two people who've taken each other for granted and they no longer play grab ass or tell their partner, damn you sexy. We need that. We need that validation. We need that from our partner. And if we're not getting it, like I warn men, if your woman is ever saying, I'm not getting enough attention, that is a 5-alarm fire. Because attention is how she gets connection, and connection is how she feels safe. And she's telling you, you don't make her feel safe anymore. And that is her number one priority. And she is going to go connect with somebody else.
Yeah.
So if you understand the source of infidelity, then yes, it can be recovered from. First, the person who is unfaithful needs to think it was a mistake. They need to think it was a mistake. Many of them don't think it was a mistake. And second, the other partner needs to look for their part. What have I not been providing for my partner? And why I rolled my eyes when I said I was studying this, because my graduates asked, is in my household with Greg, the car guy, and the ride motorcycles really fast guy, infidelity was literally a British car magazine. That was
Right.
that was his porn.
Yeah.
Was a British car magazine. And so I didn't know anything about this. And then I committed that I would study it. And sure enough, it showed up in my life. But it wasn't sexual infidelity. It was my husband had retired. I was pissed at him for sitting on the couch in the garage all day, in his chair watching TV all day, not helping around the house. And I stopped nurturing him. And he was in a poetry class, and there was a woman in the poetry class who was very nurturing. So he developed this kind of attachment to her. Nothing untoward ever happened, but it was a kind of infidelity. He lost confidence in my providing for his need to be nurtured by a kind of attention and regard that I was not experiencing at the time. And he found it elsewhere because he needed it. And I had to own that I had withdrawn that I had stopped taking care of my husband. And then that was a huge part of recovering, me owning that I stopped providing for that need, but it didn't make the need go away. It had met elsewhere.
Did he own his part in not sitting on the couch and chilling?
We developed a new set of accountabilities after that, for sure. And he owned his part that he didn't communicate, and it was a mistake.
Yeah, I think the communication part is something that is hard. It's very hard, and I actually get motivation from Jake. I feel like Jake's pretty good at communicating his just everything, and but I know not many men are. It's very, very, very rare. And I look back on my last relationship, and I think, I was withholding communication, probably of not wanting to be hurt on a subconscious level, and it would have been hard to get me to communicate. It definitely would have been. So what's the secret to getting a guy to communicate? Just making that need?
I was gonna say the opposite. And then I actually have to go. I could talk to you guys for days.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But I
gotta go in a couple minutes too. But yeah, last. Yeah.
So all communication is a risk. All revelation is a risk. To do it, you have to think it's going to be worth it. What has you think it's going to be worth it is because in the past it was. So if every time you try to talk about something, you end up worse off, it's going to make it that much harder for you to try again until you just can't do it. All your instincts will shut down. They will not let you spend energy on something that has such a small chance of success. You just can't.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with skills or abilities. It has to do with hopefulness and optimism and reason to believe if we talk about this, we'll work it out. I know we can work this out. But when you don't know that anymore, why waste your time talking?
Yeah. Okay.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's so cool to look into your eyes instead of just through the TikToks and whatever is out there. Everyone's sharing your stuff. You're popping up on all these motivational pages everywhere. So I can see a few years from now, you're going to be huge. I'm glad you come on, and we really appreciate it.
Be huge. A few years from now, I'm going to be huge.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know if I can.
You already are. I mean,
you know how many millions of views there are on YouTube? I get recognized in foreign countries by my voice.
Yeah, I know.
I'd much rather want to be more huge than the huge that I ended up as.
Yeah, it's happened. Well, it's just happened to you. And obviously the world's yearning for it. So it's happening for a reason, because you're speaking truth, and you're speaking truth that we can all resonate with as a male and a female. Yeah,
I care nothing about being huge, but I care about the message getting through, and I will do anything to get the message through.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. For that, I would have anything blow up. All right. Thank you. Let's do it again sometime.
I would love to. Definitely want to tap into your channeling.
Other side.
Yeah.
Listen to the cookies code and then let.
Okay.
I'm gonna go on Audible as soon as I get home. I'm gonna chuck it on White Clean. Yeah.
Don't get it on Audible. They don't have it. Go to AlisonArmstrong.com.
Okay, I will. Okay. All right. Love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.